There's a moment that happens to almost everyone. You're doing something ordinary, folding laundry, waiting for the kettle, standing at a window watching the street below. And then out of nowhere, a thought arrives. Not when you sent for, not when you chose, just there, fully formed, like it walked in through a door you didn't open. Maybe it's a name. Someone you haven't thought about in years. Maybe it's a flicker of dread about something that hasn't happened yet. Maybe it's the memory of a thing you said once, a long time ago, that still has a small, specific weight. You didn't summon it. You weren't trying to remember or worry or rehearse. You were just folding laundry, and then this. Where did it come from? Who sent it? If you didn't think that thought, then who did? That question sounds strange at first. Almost too simple to take seriously, but sit with it for a moment, because it points to something most of us have never really looked at directly. We assume, almost automatically, that there is a me doing the thinking, that somewhere behind all this mental noise there is someone steering, someone in charge. But when you actually look for that someone, when you stop assuming and start searching, something unexpected happens, and that's what this is about. Buddhism has been asking this question for over 2,500 years, not as a riddle, not as philosophy for its own sake, but as a practical inquiry. A direct investigation into the nature of experience. The teaching it offers is called Pratidyasamutpada, usually translated as dependent origination. It's one of the most central ideas in all of early Buddhism, and it says something simple but with enormous implications. Everything that arises because of conditions, not from nowhere. Not from a permanent, invisible self pulling levers, from conditions. A thought doesn't appear randomly. It doesn't appear because you summoned it. It appears because something else was already in motion, a sensation in the body, a sound from outside. A fragment of yesterday's conversation that your mind has been quietly processing without telling you. One thing touches another. A small chain of contact begins. A thought surfaces. The process is vast and fast and largely invisible, and we're inside it, not above it. That's the beginning of the teaching. But to really feel what this means, you have to do more than understand it as an idea. So let's try something. Right now, this moment, try to predict your next thought before it arrives. Tell me what it will be. Close your eyes for 10 seconds if you can. Just wait. Try to know in advance what will appear. Could you do it? Most people can't. And there's something worth noticing in that. The moment you tried to predict your thought, the trying itself became a new condition. It changed the environment of the mind. And what arose was something different, or nothing clear at all. This is not a failure of attention. This is dependent origination in real time. The thought that would have arisen without effort didn't arise because conditions changed. There is no separate, fixed you standing outside the process, watching it neutrally and deciding what happens next. You are in the process. You are made of the process. That's what anatta points toward, the teaching on no self, one of the most misunderstood ideas in Buddhism. It doesn't mean you don't exist. It doesn't mean nothing matters. It means the self you assumed was solid and permanent and in control, when you look closely, isn't quite what you thought it was. The Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree didn't arrive at this through reasoning alone. He watched. He watched his own mind the way you might watch weather, carefully, without flinching. Without interpreting what he saw before seeing it clearly. The Majjhima Nikaya records what he observed, thoughts rising and falling, one after another, with no permanent thinker behind them. Just arising, just passing, like the sound of rain on a roof. The rain doesn't belong to anyone. It falls because conditions made it fall. Each drop arrives and disappears. He called this quality of mind, this restless, jumping, chattering stream, the monkey mind. If you've ever sat quietly for even 2 minutes and tried to keep your attention in one place, you've met the monkey, planning, what should I make for dinner, remembering. I forgot to reply to that message, judging, why did he say it like that, worrying, what if this goes wrong, rehearsing, next time I'll say, round and round, fast and relentless. Each thought landing and already becoming the next one. Just noticing these categories is something, not a cure, not a solution. Just a small light turned on in a room you've been moving through in the dark, and in that noticing, there is already a hint of something else. Because the part of you that can see these patterns is not the same as the patterns themselves. You can watch the planning, you can notice the worrying, which means something in you is not the worry. Something in you can see it. What is that? Chapter 2. Assume for a moment that what we've said is true. Assume thoughts arise from conditions, not from a permanent self. Assume the monkey mind is just processes, chains of cause and effect. Then the question sharpens, what's left? If the thoughts aren't me, then who is here? This is where most of us do something automatic. We create a new self to be the watcher. We say, okay, so I'm not my thoughts, I'm the awareness behind them, and then we grip that. But the Buddha's teaching doesn't let you rest there either. He offered a different way to investigate, not through reasoning, through looking. Try it now if you want. Close your eyes or just soften your gaze, and instead of thinking about your thoughts, look for the one who is thinking them, not the content, the source. Find the thinker. Look for it the way you'd look for your keys, actually searching, not imagining. What did you find? Most people find thoughts, more thoughts, maybe an image, maybe a feeling. Maybe a sense of presence, warm or restless. But the thinker itself, the solid, permanent, controlling self, is not there in the way we assumed. The sense of I am thinking is itself a thought. That's what the monk Kemaka discovered. He went through the 5 aggregates, the 5 clusters the Buddha used to describe all human experience. Physical form, the body, its weight, its warmth. The way the breath moves in and out of the chest without being asked. Feelings, not emotions exactly, but the immediate quality of experience. Pleasant, unpleasant, neither. The texture of contact between self and world. Perceptions, the recognizing of things. This is a chair, this is familiar, this is threatening. The mind sorting and naming what arrives. Mental formations, the intentions, habits, impulses, the reaching toward and the pulling away, the deciding, the planning, the wanting, and consciousness, the knowing, the simple fact of being aware. Kemaka searched through each one. Body, no permanent self. Feelings, arising and passing. Perceptions, just recognition, not an owner. Mental formations, habits and impulses, but no controller. Consciousness, knowing, but no knower that was solid or fixed. He couldn't find it. Not because he wasn't looking carefully enough, because it wasn't there in the way he'd assumed. And then something shifted. The searching stopped, not in defeat, in a kind of surprised ease. Even the feeling, I am searching, just another formation, just another ripple on the water. He didn't conclude anything dramatic. He simply saw, and seeing clearly, without the overlay of interpretation, without needing it to mean something, that seeing itself was the relief. The peace Kemaka found wasn't the peace of someone who had solved a puzzle. It was the peace of someone who had stopped assuming there was a puzzle to solve. There's another story, the story of Kema. She was a queen, extraordinarily beautiful. And deeply attached to that beauty, the way we can be attached to anything that feels like the center of what we are. Her husband arranged for her to visit the Buddha. She didn't want to go. She resisted. When she arrived, the Buddha showed her a vision. A woman of such beauty that Kema's own reflection seemed ordinary by comparison, and then slowly that vision aged. Right in front of her, not in some distant future. Now, the beauty shifted, softened, folded. What had seemed permanent revealed itself as process, always in motion, always already changing. Kema saw this clearly, and what she had clung to, what had felt like the center of herself, was returned to what it actually was, a temporary arrangement of conditions. That seeing changed her completely, not the concept, not the idea of impermanence, the actual seeing of it in the body in the moment. This is what the teaching invites, not to think about impermanence but to see it happening, in a thought, in a breath. In the way the light in a room changes between morning and afternoon and you almost never notice. The seeds analogy. The Buddha once explained the origin of thought to a farmer. He said our past experiences, intentions, actions, these plant seeds in the mind. You don't plant them consciously. You don't decide, I will create a tendency toward anxiety, but life plants seeds. Repeated experiences water them. Present conditions, a sound, a word, a mood, the quality of the light, cause some seeds to sprout. A thought about work appears. That thought touches an old worry. The worry pulls up a memory of a past failure. The memory creates a contraction in the chest. The contraction deepens the worry. The chain is fast. Often we're deep inside it before we notice we've stepped in. This is dependent origination, not as a concept on a slide, but as the actual texture of a bad afternoon. And this is where a crucial thing happens in the teaching. When the Buddha described this chain, he didn't describe it to make us feel trapped. He described it so we could see where freedom was. Because the chain has gaps. Between sensation and reaction, there is a moment, thin, sometimes almost invisible, but there, mindfulness is the practice of finding that moment. And learning to stay in it, not forever, not perfectly, just for a breath, just for the small, bright instant before the chain completes itself automatically, Chapter 3. Let's sit with something. Think of a moment when the thinking mind went quiet. Not forced quiet, not the effort of trying to stop thinking, but the natural quiet that sometimes arrives. Between two breaths, at the end of a long exhale. Walking in the early morning when the street is empty and the sound of your footsteps is the only sound, and for a moment, just a moment, there is no narration. Or the moment after you set down a heavy bag, before you reach for the next thing, that brief, unguarded space. In those moments, what is present? Not a new thought, not an idea. Something quieter than that, a kind of openness, a clarity that isn't about anything in particular. It isn't focused on a problem. It isn't planning or remembering or judging. It is just aware. The Buddha called this quality sati, mindfulness, but not the commercial version, not mindfulness as a stress reduction trick, sati as a fundamental capacity of the mind. The ability to know what is happening as it is happening without immediately layering interpretation over it. In seeing, just seeing. In hearing, just hearing. In the arising of a thought, just the arising, not my thought, not a bad thought, not I am anxious, just this. The monk Anuruddha struggled with this. He was serious about his practice. He tried hard, and the trying, the effortfulness of it, kept getting in the way. He couldn't settle. Every time he sat down to practice, thoughts pulled at him. The more he tried to push them away, the more insistent they became. He went to the Buddha, confused, frustrated, a little ashamed. The Buddha's advice was quiet and specific. He didn't tell Anuruddha to try harder. He said, simply be aware of the arising and passing. That's all, not controlling it, not evaluating whether it's going well, just aware. Anuruddha went back and practiced exactly that, and what had been turbulent gradually cleared, not because the thoughts stopped, but because his relationship to them changed. He stopped fighting the river, he sat beside it, and the river, seen clearly without resistance, revealed something about itself. It had always been flowing. Nothing about it required a permanent self to explain it. Neuroscience has started to map this territory. The brain's default mode network, the system active when we daydream, self-reflect, ruminate, quiets measurably under sustained mindful attention. The brain has a native capacity to observe its own activity. This isn't metaphysics, it's measurable. But what the ancient teachers knew, and the neuroscientists are only beginning to describe, is what that quieting actually feels like from the inside. Imagine a large room. And in the room, sounds are happening, a conversation, some music, a phone buzzing somewhere. Now imagine the room becomes very still. The sounds don't disappear. But you can hear the space they move through. The room was always there. You just couldn't feel it until the sounds quieted enough. Awareness is like that room. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, they move through it, loud sometimes, urgent sometimes, but the space they move through was never disturbed by them. The Tibetan and Theravada traditions share this metaphor, the mind as sky, thoughts as clouds. Clouds obscure the sky, but the sky is not the clouds, and the sky is not damaged by them. However dark, however heavy, the clouds pass. The sky remains. What the practice uncovers is not a new state. It is an old one, always already here, that had been obscured by the constant movement. And this awareness has a quality. The word is upekkha, equanimity, not detachment, not coldness, not the absence of caring. Equanimity as the ability to be present with whatever arises, pleasant, unpleasant, frightening, joyful, without the mind lurching toward or away, like a scale that's well calibrated. It doesn't need the weights to be equal. It reads whatever is placed on it, clearly, steadily, without bending. That quality of balance doesn't come from effort alone. It comes from seeing clearly, repeatedly, that thoughts and feelings arise and pass without being owned by anyone. That seeing, when it becomes natural, is equanimity. And modern research confirms it. Equanimity training measurably changes how the brain processes emotional content. The reactivity decreases, not because the emotions stop, but because the relationship to them stabilizes. The inner weather is still weather, but you are less tossed by it. Chapter 4. So what do we actually do with this? This isn't a teaching that lives on a cushion. It's a teaching for a Tuesday afternoon, for the moment a conversation goes sideways, for the hour before a difficult thing. The Buddha never said, stop thinking. He was not against thinking. He said, see thinking clearly, use it, don't be used by it. He called this Yanizo Manasikara, wise attention. Attention that moves toward understanding, rather than away from discomfort. The story of Angulimala is here, a man who had committed terrible violence. who had lived for years inside a story about himself that seemed fixed, irreversible. His encounter with the Buddha wasn't a lesson, it was a meeting. And in that meeting, something in him that had been moving automatically paused, just paused. A tiny gap opened between the pattern and the next action. That gap was enough. His life didn't change because he was given new information. It changed because his relationship to his own mind changed. He stopped being swept. He learned to see the current he was in. That's available to all of us, not in the dramatic way, not all at once, but in small, ordinary moments. Here's one way it might look. You're working on something hard, a difficult problem. A decision with no clean answer, and your mind is grinding, going over the same ground, hitting the same wall. The frustration is real, the tension in the jaw, the shoulders. From a Buddhist lens, this thinking is just mental formations arising based on conditions. You have an intention to solve the problem. That intention is a condition. Past knowledge arises memories of similar situations. Those are conditions. The emotions attach worry, impatience, hope, more conditions. They interact, combine, shift. All of it moving through the field of awareness. The key is not to stop this. The key is to not be entirely lost inside it, to maintain even a thin thread of observation. I notice I'm frustrated. I notice I've been going in circles. I notice the tension in my shoulders. Not analyzing, not fixing, just noting. And then step 1, set a clear intention, not forced, not urgent. Just a simple direction. I want to understand this clearly. Step 2, as you work, notice what arises, the ideas, the dead ends, the moments when something almost clicks. The frustration when it doesn't. Notice these without fusing with them. You don't have to stop being frustrated. You just have to be aware that you are. Step 3, create space. This is the practical one. This is the medicine for the immediate moment. Stop, set the problem down, take 3 slow breaths, and for those 3 breaths, just breathe, not thinking about breathing. Actually breathing, feel the air moving in through the nose, the small coolness of it, the chest rising slightly, the pause at the top, the long release, feel the weight of your body in the chair. The specific pressure of the surface beneath you, that's it, that's the whole instruction. 3 breaths, full attention on just this. This isn't a trick to force insight, it's a returning. A brief stepping out of the current so you can see the current from the bank. Sometimes when you return to the problem, something has shifted. A connection forms that didn't before. The thing that felt impossible quietly becomes possible. This is not magic. This is what the mind does when it's given space. Step 4, cultivate equanimity around the outcome. The solution may not come now. It may come tomorrow, in the shower, on the walk home, or it may require a different approach entirely. Being attached to the solution arriving on your schedule, that attachment is itself a condition that closes down the space you need. Let the problem be unsolved for a moment. Feel the discomfort of that, and let it be exactly what it is, just discomfort, not a verdict on your intelligence, not proof that you've failed, just this feeling here now. And step 5, when insight does arrive, don't grip it. Acknowledge it gently, let it open. Insight that's grasped too tightly often closes down again, let it breathe. The Buddha told a story, the parable of the raft. A man builds a raft to cross a flooded river. It's difficult work, he's grateful when it's done. The raft carries him across. On the other bank, dry and safe, the man faces a choice. Does he carry the raft with him, on his head, through the forest, grateful for its service, unable to set it down? Or does he acknowledge what the raft was for and leave it at the water's edge? Thoughts are the raft. They carry you. They are genuinely useful. They're how you navigate, create, understand. But they are tools, not the one who uses them. The raft serves you best when you can pick it up and put it down. The wisdom is in knowing the difference. We began with a question. A thought that arrived while you were doing something ordinary, something you didn't choose, something that showed up without being invited. You asked, who sent that? We followed the question inward. We looked for the sender. We examined the aggregates, the clusters of experience. We sat beside the river without trying to stop it, and we found not nothing, but not what we expected. Not a solid, permanent, controlling self, but process. A vast, intricate, largely invisible process of causes touching conditions, touching sensations, touching perceptions, touching thoughts, touching more conditions. And in the middle of all that movement, awareness. Not a thing, not a self, but also not nothing. The simple, quiet fact of knowing, here, now. This is what the Culamalankya Sutta points toward, the Buddha's willingness to stay silent when questions about the ultimate nature of self moved beyond what could be usefully said. Not because the question was wrong, but because some answers are not made of words. The question, who is thinking, when you sit with it long enough without rushing to a conclusion, begins to dissolve, not because you've figured it out, but because the watching is already happening, right now as you listen, right now as thoughts pass through. The watcher and the watched, when you look closely, begin to lose their hard edges. What remains is not a new understanding. What remains is just this: the breath, the quiet, the simple, unadorned fact of being here, aware, without needing to be anything other than that. That's not a conclusion, that's not an ending, that's where the question finally, quietly returns to itself and rests.